Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, your host on this, both a video and audio version of the podcast. And maybe this is your chance to learn more about something so many of you are intrigued by, and that is chukar hunting, and maybe even the concept of drifting a whitewater river and doing a little fishing along with your chukar hunting. Well, I have the guy for you. Grant Ritchie is a professional guide, the owner of the Minam Store right there in the heart of chukar country. He runs trips on the Snake River, legendary chukar hunting territory, and we will learn everything we can about the dogs, the hunt, and no matter where you are chasing these elusive birds, among others, I can guarantee you'll learn something that'll help your hunting trips next season. Of course, that's not all. We'll get some strategy, some dog handling advice, and a look at the rare Cesky Fousek. Yeah, it's a hunting dog, all courtesy of Grant Ritchie of the Minam Store. Fix-It is back with some thoughts on puppy season, and maybe what you should shop for if you're in the mood for that sort of thing. And I'll have a consumer's guide to finding that new hunting partner. Our social pages are a little bit of a twist this week, and you'll find out why in just a moment. The Upland Nation podcast is brought to you by Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, Trulock Choke Tubes, Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food, Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, Cable Gangs Tie-Out Systems, and Pointer Shotguns. I promised something a little bit different for our social pages review this week. Yeah, I'm inviting you to be a part of them in real life, IRL, as some of you say, some of the time. I'll be at Pheasant Fest in Minneapolis this weekend doing some semi-live, if you will, versions of the podcast from the Pike Gear booth. It's near the public land stage, booth number 1121, interviewing some of the best guests I can find off the floor there, including great dog trainers, some folks with some insights into nutrition and dog first aid. And there's my alarm. That tells me it's time to get on. So I will invite you formally right now to join me in Minneapolis. If you're coming to the Pheasant Fest, we'll talk tactics, strategy, dogs, all sorts of things when it comes to public lands as well. In fact, I'll be speaking as part of a group of podcasters Saturday at 3 p.m. About upland hunting and public access in particular on the public lands stage. So if I don't see you at the podcast from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., I'll see you on the public lands stage at 3 p.m. on Saturday. It's all happening at Pheasant Fest. Stop by, say hello. You might just become a part of the podcast because we're going to be doing some things with folks who are just walking by and maybe have a question or an answer for us. I'll see you in Minneapolis. That portion of the program brought to you by pointershotguns.com. Yeah, I've been touting the brand new over and under from Pointer Shotguns because it is sweet. If you're looking to add an over and under to your gun safe, maybe gift somebody else, maybe an entry-level hunter, or maybe you are just looking to upgrade, well, this new Field Tech 912 is for you. At just $739 for the manufacturer's suggested retail price, you cannot go wrong. But you can go right. The fit, the finish, there's a choice of finishes on the receiver. It's all designed and upgraded for folks who are interested in going to the over and under side of things. Learn more about the specs and what you can expect from a Field Tech 912 at pointershotguns.com. And then when it's ready to put one to your shoulder, take a look at the dealer locator list at pointershotguns.com and then head on in to one of your locally owned retailers or some of the big boxes from Cabela's to Sportsman's Warehouse to Turner's Outdoorsman to Bass Pro. Learn more at pointershotguns.com. And sageandbreaker.com is where you restock all of your gun care products. Now that the season is well and truly done, you can get around to cleaning your guns, taking care of them so that the next time you open your gun cabinet, everything's ready to go. Yeah, everything from consumables like their CLP for spray-on cleaning, lubricating, and protection to their unique modular bore cleaning system. No matter how many rounds you put through those barrels, you will clean it well with the new, improved Sage and Breaker bore cleaning system. If you want to learn more, or if you want to make sure you're on the list for some of those sales or new product announcements, go to sageandbreaker.com. And yes, that is a real scene in the background. I am so jealous. Of course, I don't run cattle or grow hay. Grant Ritchie joins me from somewhere way far away from where he's usually hanging out this time of year. He's a pro chukar guide, outfitter, works out of the Minam Store, Minam, Oregon. We'll get into that a little bit as well. But for now, Grant, great to see you, literally. Yeah. And welcome to the Upland Nation podcast.
Thank you.
I can still ask this because it's still valid for you. How's the season going down there in, I guess we can say New Mexico, but we won't go any further than that.
It's been good. Filling in, we were talking a little bit before, this time of year we're going to a lot of expos, and sitting in a box for multiple days, you kind of need to get outside, and so been escaping to Arizona or New Mexico between some expos to extend the hunting season and kind of recharge the batteries.
Boy, I'm glad to hear that. And a guy like you who basically hunts for a living in the fall still needs to get out and do that. What do you get out of hunting this late in the season, especially as a pro guide?
It's good for the dogs to go to new climates, new species, new everything. This is my 4th year coming down to the Southwest, and it's just fun to see different plants and animals. And in Arizona, 2 years ago, we saw Coatimundi, which is this raccoon-like creature, and all the different cactuses. And I take my youngest son, the last 4 years, my second to youngest. So he started when he was 8. He's going to be 12 here in another month. So this is his 4th year coming down. And then my youngest son, this was his first year coming down. He was 8 years old this year. So go camp in the desert, see something completely different than we see the rest of the year.
I echo every bit of that. That's one of the great reasons to do it. I used to, work in some other worlds, and we were talking about golf. And then in the sporting clays world, one of the things that people really enjoy is seeing new places, going to different courses, etc., and that sort of thing. It's valid for hunting as well. Fishing, obviously, as well. Tell me, what about your 8-year-old? What is he taking away from a trip like this, especially the hunting aspects?
So he's got to tag along on chukar hunts and grouse hunts a little bit in the wintertime, but I have to be very careful about where I take him because I don't want to ruin him, because chukar hunting can be brutal.
Yeah.
So we try to pick like a Sunday afternoon to go somewhere where it's not too terrible for the kids to follow along. But when you get out here, it's funny. We get on these hikes, and the kids, the longer we hike, the more exuberance they have. Like at first, they, like if we're gaining up some elevation on the hillside, they kind of like, oh man, or this is hard. But then there's just the endorphins from hiking and being out here. They just get happier and happier. And sometimes I wish they'd be a little quieter because, maybe the birds know we're coming. But the most important thing is that they're enjoying being out here.
Yeah.
And just the enjoyment of seeing the new things. And again, we're looking at the rocks, we're looking at the plants, we're looking at the birds. Like, oh, that's not a blue jay, it's a blue bird, but it's not a Stellar's jay like we have at home. Or my Callan, the first year, the Troya cactus have these yellow flowers, and he's like, oh, these are yellow fruits. I don't know if they're fruit or flower, but anyway, he picks them off and he started collecting a few. And he's like, ow! There's all these tiny spines he couldn't see. And so it's really about family time and exploring and experiencing something together.
Those electric collars do fit on children as well if you need to break into the cactus thing.
I've threatened a few times.
Oh, I believe it. And even more times you've thought about it and known that the Children's Services Division will be calling if you try it.
Well, when we first started floating Hell's Canyon with them, we'd go to scout one of the big rapids, and I look back and I'd see Callan, he's 11 now, but coming on 12, and he'd be like touching poison oak, poison ivy, and I'm like, whoa, what are you doing? Stop.
The joys of parenting in the outdoors. I love it.
Yeah.
Let's get a little bit more background on you. Somebody says, oh, the Minam Store. What? They run chukar hunting trips? What the heck is that all about? So give us a little background on the operation. And I know you have great family ties in the area. So give me a history lesson.
Sure. The Minam Store, the first Minam Store was built in like 1909. It was probably a shack. I've never seen a photo of that first Minam Store. Minam is one of the ways to get into the Wallowa Valley. And the Wallowa Valley is surrounded by mountains. And there's only really two easy ways in there. And one of them was through Minam. And so the Minam got started as a toll bridge. The first bridge ever across the Wallowa River, the Minam and the Wallowa Rivers right there. And then it grew into community, ranching, sheep herding, logging. There's several mills there over the years. So anyway, the first Minam Store was built in 1909, and it's probably some sort of shack with some general supplies. A very nice two-story Minam Store was built in the 1920s, had a dance hall upstairs, general store downstairs. And that lasted till 1960. The new highway was going to come through, and there wasn't enough room for both the old Minam Store and the highway. So they the state bought the Minam Store, tore it down. But that was in 1960. The last mill closed down in the 1950s. So the community of Minam had already began to dwindle and shrink. Another store, Minam Store, was built in 1980, and then we bought the business in 2011 and moved it across the river to the current location, 2013. So we've had the business for over 15 years, and it's probably not the best marketing name, Minam Store, because they think, oh, you're a general store. Well, no, actually, we're an outfitter, and we have a small retail space on the banks of the Minam and Wallowa rivers, right, the confluence. So basically, we have a fly shop, some soda, general supplies, rafting gear, NRS straps, but we're an outfitter, and I'm probably too nostalgic about things, and so I love the history of Minam, and I love the history of the Minam Store, and we bought that business, so I wanted to continue that name. So probably not the best marketing move, but that's kind of the history of the Minam Store. And then my own.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just to say my own family homestead in Hell's Canyon. My great grandpa, he was known as Dad Wilson, bought a place from a guy named Frank Summers in 1900, and then homesteaded a second place up in the bench country. So those Hell's Canyon ranchers would have a winter place down low on the river, and then you'd have a summer place. You'd move your livestock up in elevation because Hell's Canyon is 8,000-9,000 feet deep, and so you just move your livestock up and down throughout the seasons. So you'd always have a winter place down low, summer place up high. So anyway, for me, I'm, I guess, fifth generation working in Hell's Canyon.
Wow.
My mom and dad, so they sold the family ranch in the late 1940s, and but my mom and dad went back to Hell's Canyon and worked on ranches in there in the 70s, and I have pictures of them on a porch at Dry Creek. We float by it every week as we're guiding to the river, and I have a picture of my mom and dad and my siblings all sitting on that porch at Dry Creek, yeah, in the late 70s. So
I love it. And you just hit on something that a lot of people they yearn for. They're curious about. We all are interested in chukar hunting for many reasons, and we'll get deeper into that. But you said float by, and this is a unique experience. There are not a lot of people who are doing this kind of a chukar hunt. Describe kind of the typical experience when they're hunting with Minam Store Outfitters.
yeah, so it's not a lodge. It's an expedition style trip. We have a giant 23-foot gear boat, and it'll hold enough supplies for 20 people in 5 days. Goes downriver with 2 people, and they set camp each day. And so when we start from the boat ramp, depending on which, there's 2 different put-ins we use depending on the time of the year. But we're floating down the river. We're fishing in the morning, hunting in the afternoon, or hunting in the morning, fishing in the afternoon. But basically, we're going down Hell's Canyon, a wild and scenic river corridor, roadless, and we're hunting the best areas, hunting the easiest areas to access because it is Hell's Canyon, it is chukar hunting. So we get out the easiest spots to hike up into the chukar ground, hunt those areas, work our way back down, fish our way to camp, and then when we get to camp, wall tents are set up, the dining hall set up. The guides, the gearboat guides, have already started prepping dinner. So you get, if you're a guest, you go to your wall tent, get off your boots and get into more comfortable clothes and come have some appetizers, have a beverage, and each day proceeds like that. We're going. It's an expedition style trip.
You just hit on something that I joke about way too often, but in your case in particular, every chukar hunt starts with an uphill hike.
Yeah.
How for people who don't who are possibly interested, I mean, there are varying degrees of uphill, and there are often places where it's once you get there, you're almost side hilling on level ground. But describe the kind of terrain you're in out there. You're starting at the bottom of Hell's Canyon. What's it look like down there?
So on the upper stretch, so we kind of do 2 distinct fall seasons. The first part is from Hell's Canyon Dam to Pittsburgh Landing. And then that season, it's Idaho only. Idaho opens the 3rd Saturday in September. And that first section is, you get to the put-in, and I tell people all this time, but we drive over Hell's Canyon Dam, you're looking down at Hell's Canyon, and it reminds you of your mortality. It's you're small, Hell's Canyon's big.
Yeah.
So you're floating down the river, and that first section is, cliffs going straight up, 5, 6, 7, 800 feet. We obviously don't hunt that. And so you're you're going down river. You're in the deepest gorge in North America, and we have specific spots we get out where it's not so steep. You're not in the cliffs. You got a trail, or you got a creek bottom, or you got a ridge line, or there's spots where humans can get up into the chukar ground. So I forget exactly what your original question was, but
that's exactly what I'm looking for, and we'll talk at length about as you ascend those slopes. There's more than just chukars out there. So let's start at the bottom and work up. Sagebrush, maybe some junipers down at the bottom. Are there any other habitat types that we should know about down there in the chukar part?
So in the section we're at, not really sagebrush, not really juniper. You're getting hackberry, and then you're getting blackberries. Hackberries, blackberries, prickly pear cactus, willows. So the let me step back 1 second. So the other section we float is from Pittsburgh down, and that section is a little bit different. The geology is a little bit different, and so it's not quite. There is straight up cliffs, but there's more tributaries,
Yeah, yeah.
and a lot of times we use those tributaries with trails to work our way upstream. So we'll stop at a creek with a trail a lot of times, and we'll hunt valley quail up through the creek bottoms, and rough grouse. And so there'll be thick hackberry, there'll be thick blackberry, there's going to be alder thickets, that kind of stuff. So it's a riparian zone. You're hunting up through a riparian zone, hunting valley quail, rough grouse, but you're using that easy, or gradual, I should say, that gradual slope of the creek bottom to work your way up to the chukar zone. So a lot of times you're hunting valley quail as you go up, and then maybe mid-elevation you start running some mountain quail sometimes, maybe some rough grouse along the way. You get out into the chukar ground, and it's going to be, rims and steeper stuff, or if you get into a little bench, huns, you get some Hungarian partridge. Those creek bottoms also hold a lot of turkey too. So if people want to shoot a turkey, like buy a turkey tag. It's like $18 or something, and it's very high percentage chance of shooting a turkey on the trip as well. So
Wow. Wow. I'm not a slam kind of guy, but you're talking about a lot of people's dream trip.
well, the diversity of species is so fun. Like
Wow.
it's fun to go hunt chukar, yes, but it's fun to also, like, you're hunting along, and you're running into valley quail, mountain quail, rough grouse, Hungarian partridge. I even had a blue grouse last year, which usually they're a little bit higher, and we're not getting that high, but one happened to come down into our little zone, and so we actually got 7 species on one trip last year, which is,
Oh
and
my
it's not like you're not checking them off the list as you go. You're just going along hunting, hiking, doing your thing. So
And one of the things you do, and you have no choice, it wouldn't be a hunt without dogs. So you're bringing dogs in a boat,
yep,
sometimes even client dogs. I think I told you my good friend Felton was a guest of yours last season,
yep,
spoke very highly of you.
yep.
But how do you tote the dogs? And then let's talk about your dogs.
Sure.
Are they in a box? Are they just loose? What are they? Your dogs are probably so well trained they fall asleep on the bow.
Correct. So the dogs, you never want to tie. This is a whitewater river, so you never want to tie a dog into a boat. You never want to have them enclosed. If something should happen, if you should, the dog should always be able to swim. So
Yeah,
you put
yeah.
a PFD on the dog, and we're running 18-foot boats. They're 8.5 foot wide, very stable boats, and there's lots of room for the dogs and the hunters, and the fishermen. So the dogs are just sitting on the boat. It's okay to have like a lead tied to their life jacket or something like that, so you can kind of control, like if it's a guest dog, having a strap or a lead onto the life jacket, just so you can keep the dog, in the general zone. Occasionally you get some crazy client dogs that want to, like, if they're fishing, they want to chase every fly or lure that gets chucked, and they want to jump in the river constantly for that kind of stuff. It's like, whoa. So it's good to have, for some dogs, it's good to have it's kind of like a long lead, right? Just a little control on the dog there. At camp, you can use tie-outs, or we take some collapsible kennels as well, so you can, put your dog away and keep them there. So,
I love it.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I've run a few bag boats, not quite the size you run, but there's lots of room for a couple collapsible kennels on those
Oh
boats,
yeah.
like you said.
Yeah, they're easy to take. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about your dogs, and pronounce it the right way so I don't embarrass
Sure.
myself anymore. And your club will be at Pheasant Fest, so I'll learn more, of course, there. But
Yeah.
talk to me about your dogs.
Yeah, so I run Cesky Fousek. They're the national dog breed of the Czech Republic. They're a wire-haired pointing. They're a wire-haired pointing breed, genetically very closely related to the Stickelhaar in Germany. They're an old Eastern European breed. What drew me to them, so I picked when I first looked at bird pointing breeds, I picked the coat first. So short hairs, they just don't tolerate the cold that we have at Minam very well. my dog's walking around here, so if he bumps the table, that's why the video is going to go a little
That's
bit.
okay. Maybe we'll get a shot. There, I see his tail. There it goes. By the way, nice long tail.
Yeah. So anyway, I wanted a wire-haired breed because they have a little more tolerance for cold than short hair. I didn't want a long-haired breed like a setter or a Brittany just because of the maintenance and in the house and the pickup and all that stuff. So I looked at wire-haired breeds first, and the Fousek, there's such a strong emphasis on them being a great family dog, and they don't get bred unless they're hunt tested and health tested. So as an outfitter, I just felt like I had the best chance of getting a good dog out of every litter with the consistency of how the breeding program is with the Fousek. And I love how family friendly my dogs are. Like, we have a retail store, thousands of people coming into that space, new people they've never seen, random dogs, and they greet everybody. They're not aggressive, they're not standoffish, and we're going to 6 expos in a row, and I have these dogs in the booth, and kids can come up and grab them by the beard, grab them by the ear, like they can lay on the dogs. They're just such good family dogs, friendly dogs. And then in the field, I can hunt Aries, my older male. He's 8 now, but still I can hunt him 7-8 hours, and I have to tell him to stop. It's like, no, we're done.
Yeah.
Don't go down that draw. Don't go down that canyon. I don't want to go down there and come back up again or whatever.
I love it. Yeah.
The durability of the breed is really fun for me. I had one of the fun trips we had last fall. It was a mid-November trip where we had another outfitter out of Montana, and they hunt sharptail and they do fly fishing trips. So very similar outfitting business as ours, and it's always fun taking the owner and some of his guides and some of his buddies, because they kind of know the routine. And they brought setters, and they did fine, but they were really impressed at the endurance of my dogs. Like, man, those Fouseks can just go all day long and never slow. They just keep that same pace, medium pace, and never wear out. And their setters were 8 or 9, so not young dogs, but they were kind of like, they were used to like a 2 or 3 hour loop, and that was the end of their day. And so they're like, after a 2 or 3 hour loop, they kind of came to heel, and they're like, aren't we done? So anyway, and their dogs were fine. I'm not trying to put down their dogs at all. They're just not used to a prolonged hunt in big country. So
that's remarkable, and I want to ask you before I forget. The rest of the off season is when you're laying the foundation for endurance like that. Do you do anything in particular, or do they just lay around all off season?
So probably we all get in the worst shape as far as me and my dogs, from February to like May, because it's a lot of prep for this upcoming season. And doing a lot of office work. We're sitting in a lot of expo booths, doing a lot of computer work, trying to take care of all the bookings. So that's probably the worst time of year for us as far as our physical conditioning. Once we get into the trips in the summertime, if it's a fly fishing trip, the dogs, we're not getting out a ton off the boat to hike or anything. But at camp, the dogs are able to run around a lot, get some good exercise. July and August, the fly fishing for trout slows down, just the water temps become an issue for us. And so we're doing more Hell's Canyon trips July and August. That's one of our main July and August trips is Hell's Canyon. And one thing I like about those trips is there's so many historical side hikes. We stop every day, we do a hike somewhere. And so it's good for me, it's good for the dogs. They're getting acclimated to the canyon, they're getting acclimated to the heat. And then I try to start doing bigger hikes July and August to start preparing us for September, because I'm not old, but I'm 46 coming this year, and like you just gotta you can't get too far behind on the physical conditioning, or it's hard to catch up again. So
yeah, I heard about that, but I'm still working on it. And by the way, 46 is not old anymore.
No, I'm not saying it's old. Just not 36, and I'm not 26.
Well, do like I do and always act your IQ instead of your age. That helps. We're talking to Grant Ritchie, Minam Store Outfitters. If you want more information, it's minamstore.com. Listen to that. That's my ringtone. Don't you love? I bet you know what that is, Grant.
Yeah, the dog's just perked up.
By the way, he'll be on the podcast very soon. I'm Scott Linden, by the way. This is the Upland Nation podcast. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to dig a little bit deeper, go into the weeds almost literally and figuratively with Grant Ritchie at the Minam Store Outfitters, and particularly some of the strategy and tactics we are going to need if we choose to do something like this, whether it's with him or anywhere else you want to chase those devil birds. And then after we're done with Grant, we're going to have a little bit of a consumer's guide to puppies. I'm going to cover just some of the high points that you might want to look at if this is the year you acquire another one. It's all coming up right here on the Upland Nation podcast after a quick break and a word from our sponsors. And this portion of the program is brought to you by Pro Plan Sport Dog Food from Purina. It's designed for active, hard-working dogs just like yours and mine. And one of the reasons it works so well is the concentrated nutrition that optimizes oxygen metabolism. That's VO2 max in the human world. And that's what allows our dogs to last all day in the field. Creates that endurance we're looking for so that they can hunt all day and maybe the next day and the next day as well. Starts with high protein, real meat is the first ingredient, and then the amino acids in that real meat nourish muscles, including rebuilding them in that crucial time after exercise so they're ready to face the next hunting day. If you want to learn more about the science behind all the nutrition, just go to ProPlansport.com. And then when you're ready to shoot better, go visit my friends at TrulockChokes.com. You know, most of us are still trying to figure out what the heck is in that business end of our shotguns. If you don't know what kind of choke tubes, let alone what constriction they are, well, TrulockChokes.com has a page just for you. It's called the Choke Identification Tool, and it's an incredible resource, as are so many other pages at TrulockChokes.com. You can figure out just by looking at the safe end of your shotgun, safe being unloaded, maybe taken apart, or take the choke tubes out if you still can, and figure out what the heck you're using, and then take a look at possible solutions to possible shooting problems. It's all available as one of the many resources at TrulockChokes.com. That's TrulockChokes.com. Welcome back to the Upland Nation podcast. On the other end of the line, your left, my right, I think. I'm not sure anymore. Somewhere in New Mexico. Yeah, somewhere still hunting in between sports show visits. Grant Ritchie with the Minam Store Outfitters. Grant, thanks for being with us. It's great to finally see you, you know?
Yeah.
We've talked by phone a few times, and I've been hoping to get out there someday. But in the meanwhile, this is better than just an audio interview. Yeah, if you're listening via audio, everybody, this will soon be on video as well. I'll keep you posted as we get all those details pulled together. We've talked a little bit about the places you go and the dogs you use, and I'd like to know a little bit more about how you get your dogs ready, not from a conditioning standpoint, we covered that, but how do you train dogs to hunt chukars and then all those other birds that you find along the way? Is there a method? Are you using anything in particular to get them ready to perform for you and your guests?
I'm a firm believer in just having your dogs on as many wild birds as possible.
Yeah.
The only time I use pen-raised birds is one for steady to flush shot and fall, so steadiness training. So I'll use homing pigeons to work on steadiness, partially for safety, for the dog, so they're not rushing in after birds when people are shooting. But partially too is, if your dog is steady on a flush, there's oftentimes a chukar or two left over if the dog doesn't rush in. Like many times you get if you're shooting a double barrel, you get your 2 shots and maybe you have time to reload, and then you let the dog loose, and maybe there's a second, a third, fourth opportunity.
Yeah.
So the only time I use pen raised birds is for that, and then I do test my dogs both in the club, the Cesky Fousek North America tests, and I usually run them in NAVHDA. And one of the reasons I run them in NAVHDA is just because I enjoy going and seeing other dog handlers and people and the different dog breeds. And but like my oldest dog, he wouldn't point at pen raised chukar to start.
What a snob.
He's like, this is a funny smelling chicken or something. I don't know what the heck's going on with this thing. He has no problem pointing wild birds as a young dog, but when it came to the first test I took him to, he's like, he smelled it, he acknowledged scent, turned, and then he's like, I don't know what's going on with this thing. And he just went and picked it up and brought it to me. And so I did have to practice with pen raised birds with him to make him actually point a pen raised chukar, because they're kind of stinky compared to a wild bird, So anyway, again, I'm a firm believer in just getting your dogs into as many wild birds as possible. The more you hunt on wild birds, the more they look at the terrain and they search the terrain according to, where they have found birds in the past. So the more positive interactions they've had finding, chukar here or a quail there or a grouse there, the better. And then the biggest thing is knowing how far back they can, how much pressure they can put on a bird. One thing we find when we have clients bring their dogs is those dogs often don't know how close they can get to wild birds, especially if they're, field trial dogs or preserve dogs where they're just hunting on preserves or they're, planting pheasant. Those dogs just get too close. They're bumping birds all the time. So one thing I really enjoy about my dogs is they often will point a covey of chukar, 80 to 100 yards back, and you can tell by the body language that the birds are out their ways. It's not like a super stiff point. They're stopped, but they're relaxed. They're just like, you coming?
I had that happen on a hunt last week.
And then you get there, and then like my oldest dog, he just goes into stock mode, just very methodically, slowly. I'm trying to interpret the wind and him, and so I'll start going one way, and sometimes he just like almost starts pushing me the other direction, like nope, down here a little bit, and so they don't figure that out unless they're on a ton of wild birds. So I still think the most important thing is just getting them out there on wild birds, whatever species you're going to hunt. Blue grouse, I love hunting blue grouse, September and October. And my female, she used to get, like when she was young, she used to get kind of like there's so much ground sound. I think sometimes they're just moving around a lot, and she had a hard time for a little while, like figuring out when to stop. And sometimes she was just bumping them too much as a young dog, or but they figure that out. They more interactions is pretty soon. She's like, okay, back off a little. Like there's a ton of scent. They're all over in here, because sometimes we have really good bluegrass populations in our home. Sometimes there's 20 or 30 birds in a covey.
Wow.
So like sometimes they're just overwhelming for a young dog at times. So for her, like learning to okay, I don't know exactly where each bird is right now, but there's a ton of scent, so I just need to stop for a second and let the owner catch up and get into this, shooting position, and then she can creep forward and start, working out all the different scent trails and whatever. So
do you ever release them to relocate, or do you trust them to relocate on their own, or how do you handle that long point when
so
it comes to getting close?
Yeah, so the Aries and Ella would always automatically do it. Like I'd get so far in front of them, and I'd be like, "Where are they?" Look out back at the dog, like,
yeah.
give me some direction here. And if they don't move, it's like, oh, it's a hun holding really tight between us, But my youngest dog, Jax, he's not 2 years old yet. He is so cautious. He's almost, at times he's almost too cautious. And it's the first dog I've had that's just so careful with wild birds that sometimes he'll point a really long way, and I'll go like 20, 30 yards past him, and I'm like, Jax, come on, like. So I do release him. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, Jax, give me. I need to keep me in a little bit tighter here on where they're at. So, and he's figuring that out. He's getting better and better. Every week we're out on wild birds, but he is so cautious with wild birds. It's a good thing, but
Yeah.
you know,
I don't think I'd argue that, especially at 2 years old.
yeah,
He just doesn't have the database yet to make those editorial decisions, if you want to call it that.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So fantastic to hear that, and I feel better about my own dog now. And by the way, and I'll put some photos up for the video as well of what Grant's dogs look like. But for the moment, and don't be insulted, they look a lot like my dog.
Yep.
They're yeah. If you looked at, in fact, I remember the first time I saw one of your dogs. It was a picture, and he was on the front of a drift boat, and I thought, well, that's a pretty good-looking German wire hair. And they all share some genetics, but
Yep.
we know the drill. You've got a club. Your club has very specific standards about conformation and performance, and they're just beautiful dogs. And I've heard nothing but good things about them, and would love to watch one in action. So someday, watch out. I might just drift along beside you.
Yeah. November, December, you need to come up and visit one of these falls. So.
I like that. A little cooler.
Yep. Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about your season. It's varied. You've got guests. It's a different game than, say, one of us who's just going out for fun. But you got any highlights from the season that you can get us stoked up about for next season? What happened to you that you really, really thought might have been epic, even in your career?
For us, the bird numbers have been really phenomenal the last 2 years. Sometimes it's hard to judge bird numbers when you're guiding, because when you're hunting wild birds, each week or each day you got different clients with different capabilities. So, not everybody's, capable of doing the same thing. So you don't always get the same number of coveys or the same number of birds each day. But the first week this year, opening Idaho season, some clients had been back. This is their third year. They're in their early 40s. They ready to hike, and they love to shoot. And I saw more coveys than I've ever seen in the last 8 years, hunting chukar in Hell's Canyon. So that was exciting. I was like, all right, you're all summer you're floating down and you're seeing chukar, and you're kind of trying to estimate, okay, how's that compare to the last 10 years? But man, the chukar numbers has just been so good the last few years. That's been really nice.
That's remarkable, because that's the first time I've heard this, and I've debriefed a lot of people on their seasons. A lot of folks, including me, would say, well, we shot a lot of old birds, but we didn't see many new birds. And I'm trying to figure out if that's because we just were hunting in the wrong place, they were cagier than we thought, or maybe it was just the way the population dynamic played out where we were. What about you? Old birds, young birds, all birds?
A good mixture. And just the number of coveys and size of coveys were really good again this year. Last year was great. This year was as good or better.
Wow.
I've heard south of us it wasn't as good. The other cool thing is the mountain quail. There's a lot of mountain quail in Western Oregon, in Eastern Oregon. They had to do a lot of population studies to open up a season again. They actually trapped wild mountain quail in Western Oregon, relocated them to Eastern Oregon, radio tagged them. They did all the research, and they're like, okay, we have a good number of mountain quail. We can open up a season. And so that's one thing that's really cool to me, is seeing the first 4 days of the lower hunt from Pittsburgh down. We see mountain quail most every day on those first 4 days, and I just love seeing those native mountain quail. They're such a cool. They almost look chukar. They got the bars like a chukar, and the largest quail species in North America. Those are, I guess, my two highlights of just the birds. Is the mountain quail have been really healthy populations the last few years, and as well as the chukar.
Well, I'm really glad to hear it. You're right. Further south of you, in the same drainage, the bird numbers were not near as big. but there's a lot of reasons for that, and we could spend all day over a couple dozen beers discussing it, but glad to hear. And yes, there is nothing like jumping a mountain quail or a covey of mountain quail. For a minute, you don't know what the heck got up. And I got to tell you, the first 10 mountain quail I shot came out of valley quail coveys. You ever see that?
Yes. It's not, like every day, but, maybe once every couple of weeks, you'll get a mixed covey of valley quail and mountain quail. And sometimes, at first I'd see one or two birds going like, oh, that was a mountain quail. Then somebody shoots another bird and it turns out being a valley quail. I'm like, well, shoot, maybe it was just valley quail. And then we started shooting both. It's like, okay, brown bird, black bird, like they're not totally brown or black, but you're seeing a little more brown, a little more black. And it's like, no, my eyes were right. Those were mountain quail mixed in with valley quail. So
yeah. Well, for you, my eyes are never right, but it's always a pleasant surprise when the dog brings back a mountain quail instead. I want to help everybody who thinks they want to become a chukar hunter, and those of us who have been doing it for 3 decades. Give us a few tips for hunting wild chukars that you see. You handle guests every day. They do many things you wish they wouldn't do, and maybe that's the first thing we should start with. Or you encourage them to do other things. What are those things?
So number one is just try to get prepared physically as much as you can. The side, the uneven terrain is always the toughest. It's not just climbing or going down. It's the uneven terrain. I fall on my butt all the time when I'm personally hunting, trying to swing on a bird, and sometimes I'm sliding down the hill and still shooting because like, oh, I'm on him. Usually doesn't work out. But first thing is always trying to get physically prepared as much as you can. It'll make everything more enjoyable. As far as things to do, things not to do, if I'm on a slope, I'm always trying to judge by the wind and where the dog is, roughly where the birds are. You're never going to predict exactly. I screw it up all the time still, or at least sometimes still. But you're trying to get below birds, because if you're above the birds when they flush, they're already say 10 to 20 yards below you, and then they're just gaining speed away from you instantly. So a lot of times you might not only get you may only get a shot at 50 yards, and you're hitting them on the back where the toughest feathers are, so the penetration's not very good. And so whenever possible, you want to get below the birds, because they're always going to flush somewhat down. Chukar might try to go up a little bit, but they're going to eventually just go down in one direction or the other. So if you can be below them, it just gives you like seconds extra.
Absolutely.
To get up your gun, get a good mount, get on a bird. You're hitting them in the soft side instead of the harder backside. So whenever the dog's on point, I get below the dog. Get below the dog, unless your dog's been working up and you got a down slope wind. If you've got a down slope wind, the dog's below the birds, then you're doing the best you can to get up to them. But if the birds are below the dogs at all, like I'm always trying to get below the dogs most of the time.
I can't agree more. And I actually just wrote a piece for somebody on that. The other problem with shooting down at chukars is we're not used to doing it. So we don't bend enough, and we don't understand that if we shoot with some sort of method that requires lead, we got to lead down, and that's just
it's hard.
So hard. So if you get below them, at least they're level with you, or maybe even rising, if you want to call it that, seems to pay off a lot. And you've seen it. Who wants to walk downhill on a chukar hunt? I never want to give up altitude, except I'm going to be a better shooter if I do.
Yeah.
So what's another dumb thing that we do?
I'd say that was the biggest one, is like people going directly to the dog instead of trying to interpret where the birds are and getting below them. I don't know. I mean, just get in shape and get below the birds. Those are the two biggest things.
Well, you had another surprise, and I'm glad you sent this to me, and I've talked with other people about it, but we talk about food sources, particularly for chukars. And we like to think that we know what they eat all the time, but you sent me a couple pictures and I looked at them. I knew what they were because we have them right in my front yard most of the time. But pine nuts in a chukar
Yeah,
crop?
yeah. In Northeast Oregon, especially my home turf, man, those chukar are eating pine nuts a lot. And early season, I am I've so often found chukar. At first, I was not even ready. I'm just like, oh, okay, walking around. We're up on the flat in the sparse ponderosa pine, so it's grass, sparse ponderosa, and a covey would get up. I'm like, what the heck? Like, what are they doing up here? This is where the blue grouse are supposed to be. And but it's just been over and over again every year. And then I'm finding in the crops just plumb full of pine nuts, and it's a great nutrient source. I mean, there's sections where places in the country where grizzly bears live off of pine nuts. So if a grizzly bear can live off of pine nuts, chukar definitely can. And the other thing is, when we get that steep snow, those ponderous pines have bare ground all around them, and pine cones and pine nuts all over the ground. So it's not only a good early season source of food for them, but it's a good late season. If you got a heavy snowpack year, it's a great late season food source for them as well. So they've figured it out, and I now never. I'm always ready now. Whenever I get out of the pickup and we'll first start, just you be ready, because there's. And oftentimes it's on my way back up. I'm coming up back out of the canyon, and the dog goes on point, 100 yards from the pickup. And I used to think always it was going to be a blue grouse, but now it's so often a covey of chukar. It's like, don't waste that opportunity. It's flat ground. You don't get too many flat ground shooting opportunities for chukar. So be ready.
I love it. That does lead to the next question. Besides a bizarre diet choice like that, what are some of the more typical food sources that chukars will be eating most of the season? We talk about early season, late season, and I'll get the main one that people think is the primary one all year, and that is cheatgrass seeds. Yeah, cheatgrass is predominant in a lot of these places, and they'll eat the seeds. They'll eat the green shoots as they're coming up later in the year when there's been some precipitation. But beyond cheatgrass, what are these birds eating?
So I think Northeast Oregon versus Southeast Oregon is very different. And
Yeah.
I didn't realize that for a while until I started hunting further south, and I started to see what you guys talk about with all the cheatgrass. They're almost eating all cheatgrass seeds and green up. Where they're a little further north in our part of the state, they eat a ton of tubers. They're especially October, November, when there's not a lot of snow on the ground. They're digging a lot. You find all these little, pinkish, purplish tubers. They're in their crop. Lots of different kinds of seeds. You find some grasshoppers. You find the pine nuts. In Hell's Canyon, you're finding some occasional tomatillos, ground cherries, I should say, from homesteaders. They look like a tomatillo. Tomatillos and ground cherries are in the same family. So it's a really diverse range of plants they eat, and when they're getting closer to that timber ground, in more in the northern part of the state where there's less cheatgrass, their diet is very diverse. So
You just hit on something that reminded me of something else. Speaking of the difference between where I go most of the time and where you go most of the time, the habitat itself is a little different. And you mentioned some of the things. Oh my God, I didn't realize there was so much cactus down there until first time I went on a steelhead trip on the Snake. But where are you typically going to find these birds? Are they hiding behind bunch grass piles? Are they in the low spots? Or is there any way for us to develop a strategy while looking at a slope like that?
Don't disregard dust. So you're going down Hell's Canyon and you got all these steep slopes, and what's different? You got all this rocky terrain, steep slope, grass, and one thing I found is if you don't have a little bit of little bench, little flat areas where they can get some soil, all that steep stuff, there's no soil it can hang on, right? All the soil gets washed away. early season, especially September, October, like I find that birds are always in an area where there's some sort of little saddle, little flatter area, and you go there and you find all these dust baths, and the
Yeah,
birds are
yeah.
going to those dust baths consistently. And I finally figured out, like, that's why they're not always they're never out on that steep crap all the time. There's this, yeah, it's steep, but then you got this little mini little bench or little mini something. And so that's something I've keyed in a lot is those areas that they can get dust baths.
I never thought about that. I see them all the time. I always recommend flat spots. Now I know why. Wow. And they'll cover you up at night, and sometimes they'll cover you up in the strangest places. Have you found any weird spots where they gather in the evening?
If it's, colder weather, you consistently see them in little crevices, like right in the rock talus slide. So you get these in the steep country, you get all the rocks are falling down in the middle of a little crevice or a little draw drainage, and they'll be on those things consistently. And those rocks hold heat.
Yeah.
They hold heat, and they can see out good from them. When it's less when the weather's more moderate, I should say, you could find them. You'll find spots where they cover you up in random grass spots.
Yeah.
It's much more random. But when it's colder or the weather's crappier, look in those crevices, especially on those south-facing slopes where the rocks have absorbed all the heat all day. They're going to release that heat during the night. It keeps those chukar a little warmer.
Yeah, and I would just amplify that. One of the very first chukar hunts I ever went on, it started pouring rain on us. We hunkered under a little rocky overhang, and we were just waiting for that storm to quit for a while so we could get back to the truck. When the chukar in there with us lost its nerve, flew over our heads and down the slope, and the other guy hit it. So we got that out of one rainstorm, but it is funny how that works.
And I've seen after. Sorry, go ahead.
No, after you.
Oh, I was gonna say I've seen after a rainstorm or a snowstorm, chukar sometimes won't move out of. They'll go into that cover, like this brush that you don't normally find them in, maybe 3 to 4 foot tall. And I've gone like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and they have not left that spot. They're just
Wow.
like, it's warm in here. We're not leaving. And pretty soon you see one chukar track around the bush. I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird, And then all of a sudden there's a covey in there. They just haven't left for the day.
It's funny because this season in particular, I shot a lot of birds in the afternoon that had empty crops,
Yep.
and I couldn't figure that out. The other thing, I finally shot a bird that had tubers in his crop. That was my reward after falling down on some of that rough country and breaking a rib, by the way. So kids, don't try this at home. But it was finally vindication for all my arguments over the campfire at night that says, no, they eat other things as well. And and you've described a lot of them that I'd never thought about until we started talking a few years back.
Yeah.
If you could leave us with one bit of advice, please. Grant Ritchie, pro chukar guide, knows the Snake River Basin and other places like the back of your hand. I mean, literally growing up in that area. If you're going to suggest something else for us, budding or old school chukar hunters that will help us become better at the game, leave us with something.
Well, this is not 100% related to chukar, but I'll tell you one thing I have started carrying the last 2 years. I remember a couple of years ago you asked like something you carry in your pack that nobody else is going to think about. And something I've started carrying in the last 2 years is pruning shears. and this has less to do with chukar, but sometimes with chukar. You're going down these trails or game trails, and you get blackberries going over them, you can't get through them, or you get rose hips, and you're like, somebody just had pruning shears. I finally started carrying pruning shears, but when they really come in handy for me is these valley quail and ruffed grouse are always in those thickets or somewhere near those thickets, and you try not to shoot valley quail or ruffed grouse over a blackberry thicket because you may never get it back. And
It never comes all the way through. It's up there somewhere in the bush.
Right. And I started carrying those the last 2 years, And I probably recovered 6 birds this year that we would not have gotten back if I didn't have pruning shears with me. So like sometimes a rough grouse, sometimes a valley quail, somebody shot, and sometimes it was me on my own personal trips. And even though I try not to do it, but man, I just cut, it took me 15, 20 minutes to cut my way through the blackberries, and finally like, ha, got you rough grouse, or got you valley quail.
Yeah,
So
I love it.
that may be specific, and I'd say even in Northeast Oregon, there's times where you got your game trails going through hawthorn thickets, and you get tore up.
Oh, yeah.
And there's only one spot to go through, and you got to go a half mile down or up, and you're in steep country, so you don't want to go half mile up or down. So I have found pruning shears to be my new secret weapon.
I love it. And I can think of at least 3 times this past season where I took a pass on a pointed bird or a pointed covey, because if I shot it, it would fall into a mess like that. Now I'm lucky. My dog will climb a tree if he needs to, but he won't climb a blackberry bush.
No.
Well, that's great. Words to live by, and a very unusual item to put in your hunting vest for that, hey, when your dog just goes on strike. Grant Ritchie, can't wait to see you in person very soon. I'm looking forward to that. In the meanwhile, you're going down the road, but you're also going to hunt somewhere behind you, and I'm jealous of that as well. If we want more information, what's the website address to learn more about your operation?
Yes, minamstore.com, and Minam is spelled Minam. Yep, minamstore.com.
Pleasure to talk with you. Thanks for all your advice, and thanks for being a part of the Upland Nation podcast. Have a safe hunt.
Thanks, Scott.
And the rest of you, stick around, because I'm going to cover, I'll call it a buyer's guide to puppies. Now, it's not going to be totally and completely complete, but it's going to get you started. And that's probably a good thing at this time of year if you're pondering a new addition to your pack. After a word from Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, I've talked so much about the hard-to-find Browning models that Dave Fiedler gets in hand or can track down for you. If you're looking to upgrade, go to a small gauge gun, or just something with a little bit of special sauce to it, a beautiful piece of wood or an unusual configuration, Dave's got a line. I know. I've spent time with him in the Browning booth at the SHOT Show. He's good friends with all the guys who can find the tough-to-find models. If you want to learn more about what he's got in stock or what he can get for you, start at midvalleyclays.com and then get the phone number, look at the gun room, look at their assortment, and then call Dave Fiedler at midvalleyclays.com. Well, let's fix it before it becomes broke. I'm in puppy mode. More to share with you on that as the weeks go on. But if this is your time of year for adding another dog to your string, I'm going to offer up just a few things that I'm thinking about all the time and become part of my ritual when I start shopping for a puppy that may help you save a little time, get a better dog, be glad that you found the new breed for that matter. Here are some things in no particular order for my puppy buying reality check. If you're not going to hunt tests or field trials, now's the time to start. You don't need to be a member most of the time. You don't need to own a dog of any sort to go and watch. And while you're watching, you're seeing good dogs do their job. You can track those dogs, watch the owners, talk with them about breeding, whether they have an upcoming litter planned or maybe they know somebody that does. It's a great resource, whatever stage you're at in your puppy buying process. Join a dog training club. Grant was talking about NAVDA and his own Cesky Fousek club. There's probably something nearby. And even if it's not nearby, when they have an event Well, it's going to be in the country anyway. So join the club, get networked into that group, and then you'll have access to the breeding and performance records as well. And that's important as you get down to the nubs when you're shopping for a breed and a breeder. Please think about the hunting you do and focus on breeds that are best for it. Sometimes you don't want a hardcore, upbeat pointing breed. I wrote a piece a couple years ago for Gun Dog, and I started the piece with get a Labrador, and I ended the piece with get a Labrador, unless you're in these narrow niches. So think carefully about the dog's well-being as well as your own, and the amount of hunting and the type of hunting you're going to do. That will narrow your focus on the right breeds. Ask others in your dog club or whose dogs you admire. Who bred that dog? Where are they? And of course, ask other breeders what they think about other breeders, and then take some of that with a grain of salt. One of the things that most of us never consider until it's too late is that there's probably a waiting list for good puppies. Get on it as soon as possible. Make sure that breeder knows you're serious about a puppy, and then watch the calendar. Time your acquisition to when you're home and available for all the things that puppies demand of you. Late night potty breaks, initial training, all the conditioning to social situations, other dogs. That all takes time and effort. And if you are working overtime for a few months, or you're out of town, or you have kids going into Little League, it may not be the time for you to acquire a new pup. I know, I'm sorry. I'm discouraging a lot of people, and that's probably good for the dog and for you in the long run. Make the commitment. That dog's going to be with you a dozen years or more. Make sure you start off on the right paw, and you both won't have to fix near as much, and you can work on your shooting instead. Well, thanks to Grant Ritchie at the MinamStore.com for all his advice and insights. I sure enjoyed talking with him and can't wait to be down there in the Snake River Canyon with him. If you will please leave a rating or a review, I appreciate that. If you've contributed to the social media discussions, good on you. Thanks a bunch. And thank you to our sponsors who make this all possible. Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, Trulock Choke Tubes, Pointer Shotguns, Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, and Cable Gang's Stakeout Systems. You know, there's more details on all of this and more at findbirdhuntingspots.com. Thanks for listening. I'm Scott Linden with the Upland Nation Podcast.